Today is the January 10th, 1983. This is Joe Todd, interview with Mildred McHard. Okay, I'll set that right there between us. Okay, Mrs. McHard, when were you born?
1907,
And when's your birthday?
October 19th.
And where were you born?
Dardenell, Arkansas.
Dardenell?
Yes.
Who was your father?
Henry Cox.
Was he from Arkansas?
Yes.
Okay. And who was your mother?
Dardenell. Cora, you mean her maiden name?
Yes, ma'am.
Cora Mitchell.
Mitchell. From Arkansas?
Yes, Dardenell.
Okay. What'd your father do?
Well, he farmed mostly.
And how long did you live in Arkansas?
Well, folks came and brought me to Oklahoma when I was a year old.
A year old. So you don't live in
I've been in
Arkansas
Oklahoma. No, I don't know anything about Iowa since I've been back and visited after I was old enough. But I don't remember Arkansas when I was born.
Okay. So you came here about 1908.
Yes,
Okay. What area did your folks move to?
Woodward County.
Woodward County. They move on a farm?
Yes.
What was the nearest town?
Sharon, I believe, was their address at that time. Oh, wait a minute. There was a little, Sharon wasn't built then. There was a little town in Hackberry.
Hackberry?
But it's gone now, and Sharon does still stand.
How big was Hackberry?
Oh, I wouldn't know. It's just a little post office and the store, you know, long years ago.
Was there a school there?
I believe there was.
Is that where you went to school?
No.
Where'd you go?
I started to school at Moscow. And
Where?
that's Moscow, M-O-S-C-O-W. My folks had moved since that time. That is, they moved to the Moscow district. And then we moved back up into the Rugby district. And that was close to that Hackberry place.
Okay. Remember your teacher's name?
My first one, I think, was Hazel Roberts.
What was your favorite subject?
Well, I liked geography.
What year did you start school?
Well, I started when I was 6. I was 6 in October.
It'd be 1913. Is that correct?
It'd be what?
1913?
Yeah, that's probably right.
How long did your folks live around Hackberry?
Well, not too many years, because I didn't go to school there.
That's right.
They moved from
to Moscow.
to the Moscow community. There wasn't any town there. Our address was Mutual, Oklahoma.
Mutual, Oklahoma?
At Moscow. I'm sorry, I'm messing everything up, aren't I?
Oh, no, you're not. I was just checking the needle, make sure it's not. No, I'm the one that's messing up, not you. What kind of house did you live in as a child?
Just a frame house.
How large was it?
Well, we lived in several because my daddy worked for wages, you know, for farmers, and we moved about quite a few times. And they were all just frame houses, and I'd say all the way from two rooms. Some of them, I know one was a 2-room house, and the last one I lived in before I married was a big 2-story 8-room house. But they weren't all that big.
Yeah.
That's the only big one I lived in. I think about 4-room was the largest I lived in before that.
And your father was a farmer and worked for wages? Okay. Is that anything like a migrant farmer or tenant farmer? Or?
No. Long years ago, there was lots of people worked for wages that way, but when I don't know why Daddy moved out here, he had a sister living there close to the Hackberry, and probably that was the main reason. And he had another sister living up northwest of Woodward, close to Fort Spy, and that's probably the reason he moved. All I know about it.
Do you know how they came to Oklahoma? They come by train or?
They came by train. And long years ago, they would, on a train, they would move all their belongings, which never was very much, and on a boxcar, I suppose it was, I don't know.
Did your father own any land?
Not until I got married. He bought a farm out by Tangier, which was west of Woodward. And that was the time that the hard times struck. He did real good. When we was on that last farm, that we sharecropped there, you know. I think we got half of everything. And it was through real good years that we lived there. And when Daddy had enough money saved up to buy the farm, he bought it. Made a down payment on it anyway. But he lost it. And that's the only farm he ever owned in his whole married life. We was poor people, like a lot of other people in those days.
Did you have running water inside the house, inside the homes?
Well, that big 8-room house we did, we had a cistern in there we pumped.
Yeah.
No, otherwise we didn't have. That was way back when they didn't have running water, period, in the country.
Have a well then? You know what the average depth of the wells in that area was?
Well, it depended on your neighborhood. The ones in the Moscow community, they weren't very deep. But some of the others, when they lived back up towards Sharon, were deeper than those were. But I wouldn't know how deep they were.
As a child, what kind of chores did you have to do?
You never heard tell of them. Well, we girls, there was 3 girls and 3 boys of us kids. Well, the boys usually did the outdoor chores, and we girls helped in the kitchen, and we did help with the garden and canning and all those things, and gathering vegetables and preparing them. And of course, there was of an evening there was kerosene to get in and lamps to fill sometime during the day. Now, some people did that of a morning when they turned them out, and some did of an evening. And as I remember, and we always did that of an evening. And we carried in wood and kindling and coal and water for the next morning, you know, to start the fires with, and have water to start the day with. And feed the chickens, and if you had hogs, you slopped the hogs, and had cows. Well, the boys all did those chores. They'd help with the milking, and I never helped until after I got married. I never helped with outdoor chores. Precious little I did.
How about laundry?
Well, we did it on the washboard in our early days. We finally graduated to a old washing machine. You turned it back and forth like this, and then finally we got a Maytag. That was after I was married. We got a Maytag washer, and it was a gasoline motor, and you had to stomp it to start it, you know. And we thought that was great, and it was a good old machine.
Yeah.
I'll say it's better than really any of these automatics they make.
Now, how did it work with a gasoline engine?
Well, you put your gasoline in, you had to start the engine, and then it run the motor that turned the machine, you know, and everything. It was a great improvement.
Yeah, better than a washboard.
Oh, yeah.
When you used the washboard, exactly how did you do the laundry? What did you have to do?
Well, we first had to pump the water and bring it in, and we poured it in a wash boiler on the old cook stove, heated by wood or coal or both. And we got that hot. And usually our water was hard. We had to put lye in our water to soften it. And then we had to skim it'd make a skim, and we'd have to skim that off. And then we'd pour it over into our wash tub when it got hot, and we scrubbed. And then we would rinse the clothes. Well, no, we'd boil the clothes. We always had to boil clothes. Of course, we didn't boil our colored clothes much, but we did our white clothes. And we had white clothes, too.
Mm-hmm. What kind of soap did you use?
Well, most people, I can't remember my mother making much soap, but most people way back in those days made lots of soap, out of lye. They used lye, but they'd use wood ashes, Mother has made some, but I don't remember using so much. P&G is one we used, but that is after I got up. I was a teenager anyway, I think. I just don't remember what it was before that.
Yeah. Okay. Ironing.
Well, we ironed with the old flat iron. You had to heat on the stove.
How far could you get with one iron before it cooled down?
Well, not very far. Depending on how fast you ironed or what you was ironing. And
how many irons did you have? Just that one?
3. We'd have 3. Have 2 on the stove heating while you was ironing with one. Mm-hmm. And then you go back and you took the one off that had been on the longest, and leave that iron. Back and forth.
They have the handle built on the iron, or was it the detachable
Well, now
handle?
some of them did. I presume Mother had one like that in her first days, and then they got them to where they had, when I got started ironing, they had one that had a thing you put on over the iron, and fastened it on, and you took it off. And that was an improvement. And then they got to where they had gasoline irons, which we never had. I didn't have electricity, and see, they were about to get electricity in, or it was in the talking when we moved to Woodward. And when we moved to Woodward, then we had electric lights and electric irons and things then.
When did you move to Woodward?
Well, I can't tell you exactly the year. We lived there, I don't know, 42 or 3 years before I moved down here.
Mm-hmm. When did you meet your husband?
Well, he was just in the community.
And when did you get married?
We married in Woodward. Went to Woodward and got married.
Okay, what year?
Let's see, what year? 1928.
1928. Do you remember World War One?
Yes, I do, faintly. Not too strong.
In the community, was there any work for the war effort? Well, some of the women knitted and...
Well, I think maybe they did. I don't know now. One thing I remember us having programs. What was different, what the wars are now. Our boys just go to war and we don't pay no attention to it, seems like. But it was very serious in our minds. I know we went to the schoolhouse and had, I don't remember what to call those programs, some kind of patriotic program though, I know, or something of the sort. I just don't really remember an awful lot about it. I can remember we saw our first airplanes flying overhead, first I'd ever saw, and of course they was way off, and we'd hear them and we'd go out and we'd find them. Maybe they wouldn't be as big as a speck, but we'd watch that plane and listen to it just as far away as we could see it or hear it. Mm-hmm. It was, something different and great.
When was that? When you saw your first airplane?
Well, it's during World War I. I don't know what years that was. Let's see, it was, my husband was a World War I veteran. He's about 13, almost 14 years older than I was. Mm-hmm. I don't know what years was it. Is 1819 or somewhere along there? World War I was.
Yeah, 1917, 1918.
Yeah.
Was your husband in the infantry?
Uh-huh.
Did he ever talk about the war?
Well, for years he didn't. See, he was in the very worst of it. He was over there in the Oregon forest, and he was wounded. And for years he did not talk about it. But in his later years, I think his mind went back a lot, and he got to where he talked about it a lot.
What did he say about it?
Well, I wouldn't know exactly. He had about a certain line of stories he'd tell about it, and he never would talk about the fighting part of it or anything that way.
Mm-hmm. To regress to the laundry again, did you buy your starch? Did you make it?
Well, I imagine Mother made starch far back when I was old enough to help with the laundry. I don't remember her making it. We bought starch then, but they used to make it with flour.
With flour?
Mm-hmm.
How would they mix the flour? And...
Well, they mixed flour and water, and depended on how stiff you wanted the clothes, whether you, how much flour you put in, how much water you used, and so on and so forth. You had to cook it.
Oh, you did?
Mm-hmm. And you cooked your flour, with the water.
How long would you cook it?
Well, until the flour would look clear, flour poured in water will look milky or white, and it would have a clear color out of it, and it would be thick.
Oh, so you'd need...
Not like making water gravy,
Okay.
only you didn't have any grease in it.
Okay.
Just water and flour is all there was to it.
Did you live in, where'd you live in the 20s before you got married?
Lived in the country, in the Moscow community. That's where my husband lived.
Were there any flappers out there?
Flappers?
Yeah, in the 20s.
Oh, I guess. I don't know.
Do you know what a flapper is?
Well, I've heard of them.
But you weren't a flapper then?
No.
No.
We didn't have flappers in our community that I know anything about.
Mm-hmm. Did you move to Woodward after you were married?
We lived on the farm about 10 years, I guess, after I was married, and then we moved to Woodward.
What was your husband's name?
Ray.
I'm sorry?
Ray.
Ray?
R-A-Y.
What did he do?
He farmed until we moved to town.
What kind of crops did you raise?
Well, wheat was our main crop. Really, it wasn't after I went. That was before I got married. That was my daddy's crop for the last, I don't know, about 10 years. But Ray didn't raise wheat. We raised Capricorn. We milked cows, a few cows, about maybe 10, 11, or 12, something like that. And they would vary how many we was milking. And we raised Capricorn mostly, and cane. We raised feed for our cows, is what we raised feed for.
Yeah.
And our chickens too.
What is the difference between regular corn and Capricorn?
Well, corn, there's a lot of difference. Capricorn is just a little tiny round grain. Don't you know the difference? Or are you just asking me that to get me to tell you?
Get you to tell me.
Oh dear, well, have you ever saw corn?
Oh yeah.
Have you saw Capricorn?
I'm not sure.
Well, now, they used to. Well, I know, it isn't their main crop, but I know one year we went out to the Panhandle one fall, and I tell you, the Capricorn was just thick everywhere out there, but they had, I think, a wheat failure that year, and then they'd found Capricorn. Mm-hmm. I don't know whether wheat hadn't come up for a while, or whether it blowed out of water. I don't remember about that. But I know they had an awful lot of Capricorn, and I don't see a lot of Capricorn anymore in the country. Mm. Of course, they don't raise their own chickens and hogs and things and feed them like they used to either. They buy.
Now, is Capricorn strictly a feed for cattle? Is it?
Well, cows, chickens, hogs, anything you want to feed it to by the way of livestock. And corn, they used to use corn to fatten things with, fatten your hogs. We always thought we had to fatten hogs out on corn.
Mm-hmm. And did your husband raise wheat also?
Did who?
Did your husband raise wheat?
No, he didn't raise wheat.
Mainly what, Capricorn?
We just had a small 160-acre farm, and he didn't farm very much, but we had a pasture land and farm on it, that is grain crops, and then we raised cane. That was just that was mostly just for fodder, you know, to feed the cows.
What kind of cane?
Well, it wasn't sugar cane. I don't know what you'd call it. Excuse me.
Have any kids?
We had 3.
3.
Boy and 2 girls.
How many grandkids do you have?
I have 5.
What were you doing when the stock market crashed? 29.
Well, I don't remember really a lot about that. That was the next year after I got married, wasn't it?
Yeah, 29. That was, I think, Black Thursday or Black Friday.
I don't remember really.
Yeah. How did the Depression affect you?
Well, it didn't hurt us as bad as it did some people. My husband was wounded, and he did draw a little compensation, which wasn't very much in those days. I'll tell you one thing, I think it was $68 he got a month when we moved to Woodward. And there was 5 of us kids, 5 of us. And Ray's mother was first with us. And we lived on that. And we done a lot better. Now that's awful, it sounds terrible, but now we did a much better than most people, or a lot of the poor people in Woodward. Not better than most people, but the majority of the poor
That was a lot of money back then.
Yeah, but listen, look what you could buy things for a nickel or a dollar.
What could you buy back then for $68?
Well, I said 68.
Yeah, what was the price
Well,
of
we
goods?
just lived on it.
Yeah. How
Just
much
regular.
did beef sell for in the store?
How much did what?
Did beef sell for?
I don't remember. I'm no good at remembering prices and things. As I told you when you started in, that brother of mine, he could tell you the whole works.
Did many people around you move to California?
Well, yeah. Well, not right really around us. There was more, I think, from the Panhandle out that way moved than there was from around our way. There was quite a few people, though, did go to California along about that time. And lots of people lost their homes. You know, that's the saddest thing, I thought.
Okay. Was your land paid for at that time?
No. Our land was school land, and it belonged to the McHard, belonged to Ray's mother, and, you know, they were the ones that settled on it. And we lived on it with Ray's mother there. The years we lived in the country till we moved to Woodward.
Mm-hmm. So the Depression didn't affect you that much, that bad?
No, we just done really better that way than lots of people did. We didn't lose the farm and things like that.
And you raised your own cattle and hogs then, so you always had...
We didn't raise hogs. Ray didn't like hogs.
Mm-hmm.
We raised, we had milk Jersey cows. That was our main living. And Ray's mother, she raised chickens, barred rock hens. You don't hear tell of them very often anymore.
What kind were they?
Barred rock.
I'm not familiar with them. What kind of chicken is it?
Well, it was a large chicken, and it had, if you had a good breed of them, that's what she did. She bred hers up, and the feathers would run in stripes. It'd be kind of a black stripe and a white, not really black either. I don't know. I guess you'd call it black though. And white stripes, you know, they'd try to breed them so those stripes would run. Some of them, if they weren't striped, or they were just speckled all over, you know, black and white.
Yeah.
But she bred her chickens up and had real good. And they would, in those days, they raised chickens by incubators, you know, or setting the old hens. And, of course, everybody on the farm had a few chickens, you know, and cows, and that was our living, you know, and make garden. we didn't run the store after everything we needed.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't have to get very much. We didn't need very much in those days like we do now.
Right.
There wasn't a lot to buy in the stores like there is now.
Mm-hmm. Can you describe what a dust storm was like in the Dust Bowl?
What?
A dust storm?
Well, I know what dust storms are. I've sure lived through some of them.
Or describe a black duster.
We had one that rolled in. It was on a Sunday afternoon. It was the worst one I remember there at Woodward. But they had worse ones out in the Panhandle than we did. But anyway, this one came in. We saw it, just a black cloud rolling on the ground. And when that thing rolled past, it was just almost as black as, well, it was dark. And we was out doing our chores. It was late in the afternoon. We was out doing our chores. And we went in the house and we lit those old kerosene lamps. And, you know, they wouldn't penetrate the light at all. But just sometime day in and day out, the wind and the dirt blowed, you know. But not like that. That was the real bad one. But they used to have them like that out in the Panhandle quite a lot. The Panhandle was much, much worse than the northwest Oklahoma. Northwest was bad enough.
Mm-hmm. Could you keep the dust out of your house?
No.
Did you try?
Well, you finally give up trying to keep it completely clean.
How long would a dust storm last?
Well, that just depended. You know, sometimes it'd be maybe a dirt storm for 2 or 3 days, and sometimes just for a day and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But wind seemed like the wind just blew all the time, and when the wind blew, the dirt blew.
How'd you breathe without getting dust, you know, in your lungs?
Well, I presume we did get dust in our lungs, but we lived through it. We didn't bother us. Mm-hmm. My son, he had asthma when he was 4 years old, and I don't know. Of course, then they didn't know a lot about asthma like they do now, and he was just awful bad with it there one winter. And we had dirt storms, but I couldn't tell the dirt storms made it any worse. I really, in later years, thought, well, probably it was something that he was allergic to in the house. Maybe I'd keep him inside, you know. And, you know, since I've learned that feathers, I mean, I had feather pillows, you know, and a lot of things that you can be allergic to that causes it to be worse.
December 7th, 1941. Pearl Harbor Day.
D-Day, Pearl Harbor Day.
What were you doing?
Well, we were home at the time we heard the message on the radio. That was before TV time.
What was your reaction?
Well, I don't know. I just felt so stunned, really.
Was there much work for the war effort in Woodward during World War II?
Well, just what kind do you mean?
I mean, like, was there a lot of support for the boys going to war, bond drives?
I don't remember so much about that part of it, but we did buy some bonds, I remember. Not very many, because we didn't have money to buy with. But they had the Red Cross there, and they knit things. I didn't knit. Never did know how to knit. But Ray's mother, she knit sweaters and things for the boys and socks. And I helped with they made bandages, you know, and I helped with that summer. I don't know what you call them, bandages. They were kind of patches, what we was making, just little square things, you know, and it was made out of, looked like a cheesecloth, and they folded up into little small squares, so square, you know, and sent those out. And I just don't remember a lot of other stuff they did.
What were the July 4th celebrations like during World War II?
What was celebrations?
July 4th.
Oh.
Were they extra special, or?
Some people might tell you they were, but I don't remember them being anything extra special.
Mm-hmm. Now, I got a big question for you. 1947.
Well, that was V-Day.
No, that was 45.
Oh.
Now, that's what I was going to ask. What were you doing on VE and VJ Day in Woodward? Were there big celebrations when the war ended?
I think there was. I think people just went down the streets a hollering and tooting horns, and I don't know what all didn't go on. I don't remember, really.
Okay, now, 1947 in Woodward. There was a tornado.
Oh, yeah. I remember that. We were there.
Tell me about
and
it.
We were in it.
Tell me about it.
Well, it tore our house up. We were in church, or I figured some of us would have been at least hurt or killed, maybe. There was people killed all around us and injured, all around our home. But we were at church, as a lot of people were. And all the church, well, there was one church blown away, but nobody was hurt. But our church was damaged a lot. We could hear it. We were in the basement. As the year our son graduated from high school. And our church, always every year, they had a program and a supper for the high school graduates of the church. And that's what we were doing there at church that night. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been there. Mm-hmm. Shame on us, we didn't go to prayer meeting then. But I did after that. Yeah. But anyway, it was terrible there at the church. You know, the lights went out. When it struck, it just struck with a bang, you know. And the lights went out, of course, first thing, and everybody was in the dark. And the nursery, we was in the southwest corner, and our nursery was back in the northwest corner of the building, or northeast corner. And some of the women began to scream, wanting to get to the nursery, you know, and it was so black, and you had a long ways to go to get back there, and through halls and rooms and things. And well, it was just terrible, and I don't even like to talk about it.
Yeah. Just, did you have any warning that it was coming?
If we had been familiar with tornadoes, we would have had, yes. Of course, we didn't have any sirens or anything that way to warn us. But even if we'd known what tornado clouds were, now, before we went to church, there was an awfully black cloud back in the southwest, and it was just a lightning, something furious. And when we got to church, it was still just terrible, and I made the remark, I'll never forget it. I don't know how it comes I remembered it. I said, well, it'll all be blown over by the time we get out. Now, we had lots of windstorms that come up, you know, and maybe dirt would blow and maybe a few drops of rain. That's what I figured that'd probably be. And it doesn't last long, just over. Of course, the tornado didn't last long either. But that's what I said. And sure enough, it wasn't very many minutes after we were in there that it struck. And then we had the office time getting home. There was limbs blown under the car. We had to pull limbs out from under the car there at the church. And we got down across Main, and I kept thinking all the time, we'll run out of it. You know, a tornado is what Whitehead saw before. It just covered a little strip of through a town. But I kept thinking, I thought, oh, it'll be all over by the time we get home. We live in the north part of town, in the worst part where it struck worse, you know. And so, farther we went, the worse it got. And we got so far and we couldn't go no farther in the car, and we sat there a few minutes. Well, we had some other people with us. And one woman, she got out, well, she was going to go home, and her husband was home and see how Henry. And the other one, a girl, she got out, and she said, well, she was going to go see about her folks. So then we all got out. And we went home. We had to climb over things and under things and around things. And if it had been dark, we couldn't have seen the thing. We never would have got there. But, you know, it was lightning, still lightning a lot. And then there was a big fire in that end of town, a building burning. And that made light, you know, when we got home.
Does it bother you to talk about that?
Yes, I get nervous. Still do. For a long time after the tornado, every time a cloud come up, I don't care how far away I saw a cloud, it just made me start going. But I got over that, but it does make me nervous to talk about it. I don't like to. Well, and I think that's the reason my husband didn't talk about the war. He knew the horrors of it, and he couldn't stand that.
Yeah. Well, we won't talk about that anymore.
Well, it was terrible, though, anyway. Friends got killed, and some of them was even buried before we knew they was dead, you know. You didn't have any communications or anything.
How many people were killed in that tornado?
Well, there was around 100 or more. I don't remember just how many they did say. And what was a strange part of it, there was 2 little children they never did identify, and I can't feature that. To this day, they haven't been identified. They're buried in the Woodward Cemetery.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I can't feature that. I just don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, well, maybe it's blown in. You see it come in from the southwest, and it did hit some other towns out that way. I bet it's clear back in Texas, you know, but I thought maybe it's blown in, but looks like somebody would have been hunting them. Like people were lost, you never saw anything like. They grabbed them up and they took them to the hospital, and then they take them off to Oklahoma City or to Wichita or Alva and Enid, and I don't know where all they didn't take them, and they wouldn't know where they were. One of our neighbors, one of the little girls had a broken leg, and they took her to Wichita, and they couldn't find her. And she wasn't old enough to talk plain enough, you know, for them to understand her. And they'd ask her about who she was, and she couldn't even tell them, and asked her what her daddy's name was, and I don't remember what she said about that, but anyway, they asked her what he did, and she said, let's see, what was she said? Something funny, but it wasn't what he did. He drove a laundry truck's what he did. But anyway, they finally identified her through her dog.
Huh.
She had a dog.
Mm-hmm.
And when she got home, she said, well, Mama, I was in the hall all the time. Didn't you see me?
Did people help each other?
Oh, yes, sure.
Mm-hmm. Okay. How big was Woodward when you first moved there?
Well, I think it's probably around 5,000 or something like that. I'm not sure at all.
Who were some of the prominent citizens?
When we moved there?
Yeah.
Well, the Terry Theater, those men were prominent. Vance Terry and Ben Terry, and the Vance Terry passed away just last week, I think it was. I don't know just who the main prominent one was in town. I can think of lots of people, but the Trigos were prominent people there in Woodward. And Orland Trigo, the son, is still there and in business. And
What kind of business were they in?
they were in a clothing store, and then they started up a factory, a clothing factory. Well, it was a Western wear factory, and it still runs.
What's the name of it?
I think it's called the Western Wear. They kind of changed the name of it. Now, I don't know whether it still goes by the Trigo name or not. I worked in that for a while. That's when it's downtown. Then later years they moved it out. Well, at that time it was northwest or southwest of Woodward, but now Woodward's grown way on out past that.
What'd you do in the factory?
Oh, I just sewed on culottes and made moccasins and belt buckles, and I worked some on coats, but I never did sew on the machine on coats. I just did hand work.
Who was the banker in town when you first moved there?
Oh, Eddings Bakery was the first one. And one I remember now. There was one before that, and I don't remember what. And I'll tell you somebody else who was prominent people. That was the Martisons. They owned a store there. And the Sauls. And I had another man on the name, and I can't think who he was now. Well, no need for me to try to think when I don't remember. When anything slips in my mind, it just goes like that.
Who were some of the big ranchers around Woodward?
Well, Ferguson Ranch. It was north of town. And there's the Easterwood Ranch. I don't know whether it was a big ranch then or not. I think it has been. The boys running it now.
Was Ferguson Ranch, was that Governor Ferguson?
No, he wasn't governor, but one of them did have a government position.
And there was a territorial governor, Ferguson.
Well, he could have been maybe one of the older ones farther back than I know of. I don't remember.
I think he was from Watonga, I think.
Well, he probably wasn't
I'm not
from
sure.
Woodward.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, in the 50s. What'd your husband do when you moved to Woodward?
Well, he got a job with a fellow that run an implement company, and he also sold Pontiac cars. And my husband was a parts man or something of the sort. That's not what they called him neither, but anyway, he sold parts and just sold things.
Okay.
He kind of held the fort down, you know. The fellow he worked for was Park Seipel, and Park just trusted him to, when Park would be gone, it's just him and Park that run it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
He and Park would have a mechanic, but then he didn't have any other help, you know. Maybe once in a while 2 mechanics. But Ray just kind of held the fort down when Park would be gone, you know.
Yeah.
And of course he sold parts and things that way. My husband always said if he hadn't been crippled, see, he lost an arm. He was shot through the stomach and then he lost an arm just below the elbow.
Mm-hmm.
And he always said, well, if he hadn't been crippled, he would have been a mechanic. He liked mechanic work.
Yeah.
But now, he used to, he could just about fix an old Ford. But nowadays, later years, why, you know, the cars got more complicated and he didn't know so much about them.
Mm-hmm. You have any comments about your childhood growing up?
Anyway.
Comments about your childhood?
Well, I don't know. We were just ordinary people. Poor like lots of people were in those days. I just had me and my oldest brother, I'm next to the oldest, we just had 8th grade education, and then my other 4 brothers, had 2 brothers and 2 sisters younger than us. One of them had a high school education, one with girls, and the other 3, they all went through college. And my youngest sister has a master's degree. She's just retired now from teaching. And I don't know whether my youngest brother got his master's degree. Anyway, he went to school at Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and got a degree there after he'd been in college. He worked for the, well, I can't tell you what you call them, but this welfare, it's like the welfare, only he worked for the Indian Agency. Mm-hmm. He worked for the welfare at first when he started out, and then he was just a caseworker, you know. That's where they start out on. And then he went to Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and got a degree down there, and then he was worked for the Indian Agency, and before he retired, he was, I don't know what you would call his title on it, but he had charge of, I think it's about 5 counties down in southeastern Oklahoma at the last. Mm-hmm. They switched him around, you know, several times. He was in Arizona, and he was in New Mexico, and he was in Yakima. Well, his office wasn't in Yakima, Washington, but they lived in Yakima, Washington. And then for the last 5 years, he was transferred down to Talihina, Oklahoma. That's where he finished his 30th year.
Mm-hmm. Were there any WPA projects around Woodward?
Oh, yes.
What were they?
Well, they built roads, I think, for one thing, and the way I know they worked on roads. And then, you know, Boiling Springs at Woodward, you might have heard of that. It's a state park. They made that, about all the work out there.
What's the story behind Boiling Springs?
The story?
Yeah, is it?
Well, I can't tell you too much about it. It started from, there were springs there, you know, and they just bubbled up out of the ground. And that's where it got its name, Boiling Springs. And then, later years, they made a state park out of it. And they tried to keep those Boiling Springs, they fixed domes over it. One time they had a nice glass dome over it, you know, and people with rentals would just go in there and break things out and just tear them up terrible. So they still, I think it's still covered, but it's not got that nice pretty dome over it that it had.
Mm-hmm. What about CCC camps?
Well, my youngest brother was in that until they got ready to go into service, and then they turned him loose on account of he had a heart problem. Let me think. They didn't have any at Woodward, I don't think.
Where did your brother serve in the CCC?
He was in, well, he was in Louisiana, and he was in, Utah, Nevada, or somewhere up in there. And it seems like that's where he was, maybe when he, they had to take their examinations, you know, to enter into the World War II. Yeah. And he was turned down. Just broke his heart. And all the boys, I guess the good Lord didn't intend for him to go. Because all the boys, or most of them, that the company he would have been in, that he had been in CC camp with, went into the very worst of the war, and most of them was killed and injured and one thing and another. But he would have gladly have been right in the middle of them if he could have. Mm-hmm. And you know, my husband, when World War II broke out, he would have went in a minute if they'd have took him, but of course they wouldn't take him. Oh, he thought that was terrible. He thought, well, these boys are inexperienced. Well, we know what it's all about. I said, well, you didn't know before you went in. But he just about went nuts because he couldn't go in, and they had taken the young boys. And our boy was too young for World War II, but he got in the Korean War. Yeah.
Well, I think we have a good interview.
I feel like it's bad.
No. Very good. Okay, you have any last comments? Anything you want to tell your kids or grandkids?
Tell my kids or grandkids. Oh, I'm proud of them. All the grandmothers are. Mm-hmm. I don't have any great-grandkids yet. I have one grandson married. Don't have any greats yet. Mm-hmm. That's the only grandkid I've got married. They're all old enough to get married now. They're all grown. My two youngest are 17. No, wait a minute. Let me think a minute. They're 18, and they will be, the oldest youngest one will be 19 in February next month.
Okay. Well, thank you.